I think they're losing it. And I think they know they're losing it. The Madison Square Garden rally was not a political event that somebody would hold this close to an election if they had the confidence that they were going to be electable. It's just not. Are they going to try and cheat? Probably. Is the relationship between Mike Johnson and Donald Trump something that we should scrutinize? Absolutely, we should. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that every single person in Trump's orbit has agency. And when people are working toward the common good, we can generally infer that their principles and agendas overlap. But when people are instead working for selfish, manipulative reasons, the people in those circles all have their own agency. That means that they make decisions out of self preservation and self power attainment, like Elon Musk and Donald Trump, for example. If you were to take those two people and isolate them, at any given time, either one of them will throw the other one under a bus. They will absolutely rat the other one out if it means a permanent increase in their personal power. They are not partners. They are each other's means to some personal end. And now extend that analysis out to everyone you saw up on stage. If you listened to anybody who went up on that stage and you are familiar with how men behave after highly contentious relationship breakups, you will recognize the voice, the tone, the words, the attitudes, and perspectives of weak, insecure, emotionally immature man babies. I say man babies because they're adults. They're objectively adults. They have been on this earth a long time, but their emotional maturity has not evolved past what we would expect from a toddler. Toddlers would blame other people for their own issues. I am unable to do X, it is somebody else's fault. In a way, white supremacy and heteronormative patriarchy are both extensions of a kind of toddler way of thinking. It's an de-evolution of where our brains are supposed to be going, where we get into a state where we ought to be going, is getting into a state where our neocortex, our frontal cortex, can override our central nervous system, such that if we are feeling anxiety or a panic attack in a situation where we need to act, our frontal cortex can override our emotions and allow us to engage in that courageous behavior. But what we see from people on the far right, what we see from people at the Madison Square Garden, what we see for people who are voting for Trump no matter what, is this internal, tiny little inner child who is frightened, frightened at a world that has changed and not kept up with them. They are told by very wealthy capitalists that everything is the fault of someone else, not the people who are directly harming them by buying their politicians and enacting and supporting policies that directly harm American families. None of this matters because for somebody who has the emotional maturity of a toddler, the only thing that matters is vindication, is the feeling of I'm right, you're wrong. There is no self-reflection. There is no accountability. And if you've been in a relationship with a man and that relationship has fallen apart, and that men, like 9 out of 10 men in the world, and that man turned into a violent, vitriolic asshole, you will recognize the words that you heard on that stage at the Madison Square Garden. These are not people who are confident in an electoral win. These are people who are selfish, who are emotionally immature and who have way too much of a uh, illusion of grandeur about themselves. They think they are more important than they actually are. Are they dangerous? Of course they're dangerous. Will this event incite people to violence? I think the correct way to think about that question in that circumstance is whether or not there is a contingency of the population that's predisposed to political violence. That answer is yes. And I don't think that this event is going to move any needles in terms of like somebody who was on the fence about being violent and then will suddenly be violent. That is not how far right people operate. That's not how their heads operate. The vast majority of people who support fascists like Donald Trump are weak, scared, emotionally immature man babies. Every single one of them. They're big. Men are objectively, like, physically larger than women. They're big, yeah, they're big humans, but they're insecure and they're afraid. They're afraid. You can see that in the way their media reports things to them. Everything is about fear. And the reason that everything is about fear is because they are, as I said in a video right after the Trump Butler rally crap, conservatives are deeply sensitive people. They are deeply sensitive to any semblance of change and deeply sensitive to any hint of self-accountability. That's not a criticism, that is an observation. When you're dealing with people who are deeply sensitive, they are going to lash out in the way that we would expect an emotionally immature toddler to lash out. So is this rally going to move any needles? I don't think so. This is the rally. This is, in my experience and in the experience of the political scientists that I respect, this is a rally that is a sign of a failing, weak, insecure campaign. This is part of an extinction event. And I hate that I'm about to say this, but Lindsey Graham was right. Well, a broken clock can be right twice a day. Lindsey Graham was right. And what Lindsey Graham said a long time ago was that if the Republican Party hitches their wagon to Donald Trump, the Republican Party will be no more. What we are watching is the same thing that happens when we see privileged, immature white men have their power taken away from them because of the choices that they have made and the behaviors that they have done. We are watching in real time the coming to terms with accountability that Donald Trump et al. Are having to do. These racists are coming out of the woodwork like cockroaches. The people, the half the country that thinks that that's a strong man, they're feeling more confident in showing their ass. But I'm going to tell you that if you haven't talked to people in their early 20s lately, you should. Young people, Gen Z, are incredibly intelligent. They are incredibly intelligent. They think way faster than we do. They are enormously smart. They have these information machines that are constantly downloading data into their brains. These people think faster than us. They are smarter than us. They're more inquisitive than us. They're not falling for it. This shit doesn't work on them. It works on us, on our generation, because the millennial generation, that's where I am, I'm pushing 40, the older millennial generations, we were pushing off the Gen X and boomers who were not giving us the ability to raise our kids in an environment that looked different than the homes that we grew up in. But we're already there. These kids are smart. Electoral turnout for young people is going to be higher than we've ever seen in history. I think everybody's going to be really surprised at how this election is going to turn out. And I'm feeling hopeful. That rally was dog shit, but doesn't make me feel scared. Actually makes me feel a little bit more hopeful.